Hi everyone, welcome to Stories of Hope and Recovery. I just want to ask the people in the back if you can move towards the front just to make this more comfortable for all our speakers. Please be sensitive to all of you speakers. It's really hard to put your story out there, and I just hope you all learn a lot from it. We are going to have Q&A for a couple minutes after each speaker goes, so if you have any questions, save them till the end. And we're going to have 4 speakers. I know this session is supposed to end at 5, but we're likely going to go till about 5:15, 5:20. There's nothing after this except dinner in 2 hours after that. So please stay till the end if you can. And now we're going to start with our first speaker, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you. So first, thank you, all of you, for coming and hearing my story and my journey about POTS. A lot of this you are definitely going to be able to relate to. So again, my name is Wendy Berkowitz, and I'm on the Patient Advisory Board of Dysautonomia International. So I always like to start out, we all could use a little humor. Can anyone relate to this? Yes? We have a raise of hands. Definitely days I can relate also. So before I start talking about my journey, I think it's important to talk about my life before POTS, to see where I was, the journey I went through, and where I am today. So my life before POTS, my family and I moved to Rye, New York in 2010 after stints of living in New York City and Hoboken, New Jersey. My future seemed bright. I was married to my husband, Mitch, still am married to my husband, Mitch, and a mother to a 5-year-old son, Braden. I was an active woman. I worked at a very fast-paced advertising agency in New York City, and I was just settling into our new home when I became pregnant via IVF with my second son, Blake, at the age of 39. I always had some health annoyances, I would call them, before my diagnosis. There's no real health concerns other than being diagnosed with celiac in 2008. I always had trouble waking up in the morning. I felt lethargic. I never liked standing for long periods of time. I always just kind of felt lethargic. My friends would always say I was just sensitive. I instinctively always crossed my legs, and I learned later that that helps lower your heart rate. I always had some stints of anxiety and depression throughout my teen years. And a very strange symptom I had was I felt water dribbling down my legs at times, and I would go and I would wipe it off, and it would be dry to the touch. Again, I thought I was just sensitive. So 2011, this was the major year of change for me. I was pregnant with my second son, and I was placed on precautionary bed rest at 15 weeks. And I was on bed rest from 15 weeks until 40 weeks. 1 week before I was giving birth, I was given the clearance to get up and move around. And it was so difficult to get up and move around at that point. I knew I was deconditioned, I'd been in bed for months, but I had no idea how difficult it was going to be and the severity of how hard it was going to be once I got up to move around. I instantly stood up and I felt my heart rate beating out of my chest. It would exceed 150, 160. I always felt like I needed to sit back down. Just getting up out of my bed or walking to my kitchen, I immediately felt like I had to go back to bed. I knew something was very wrong. And at the time when I was diagnosed, I felt lucky that I had been pregnant, because while I was pregnant, I literally physiologically felt the symptoms of POTS. I felt the blood pooling down into my belly, and this would start a contraction of my baby. And I thought that that was odd, really odd. And then along with my heart rate beating 150, 160 resting heart rate, an alarm went off and I really knew something was wrong. So I Googled my symptoms. I literally just Googled blood pooling from my head to my stomach. And the first thing that came up was POTS. So a light bulb went off for me. I thought, okay. I said to my husband, Mitch, I said, you know what? I think I have this. I think I have this thing called POTS. And what do you think he said? You're crazy. You don't have this. There's no way you have this. But I knew my body, and I knew this was very different from my first birth. So I ended up going to my primary care physician at that time in hysteria because I was literally days away from delivering my baby. And I went into his office. He said, sit down. Let me take your heart rate. Let me take your blood pressure. And he did. And of course it was fine. I was sitting down. And I said, I know I'm pregnant, but there's something wrong with my heart rate. And he said, no, your heart rate's fine. I said, no, I looked up this condition, and it's called POTS, and I think I have it. And he said, I'll be right back. He leaves the room, and he left the door open a crack, and I peek through, and I could see him going in his office and looking up on his computer, what was POTS. And he came back in, and he seemed a little more informed about POTS. And he said, well, you know, if you had POTS. And I said, I know I have POTS. But he quickly dismissed me that day. So I left, and I was still in hysteria, because even just leaving his office and going to my car and getting in my car and driving home was severely difficult for me at that time. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's because I'm pregnant. Maybe I don't have POTS. So I called my OBGYN, and I said, something's wrong with my heart rate. Can I come in? Can you take a look at me? And she said, yes, come in. So I went in and sat down on that crinkly paper, and she took my heart rate, she took my blood pressure, and she's like, you're fine. She's like, you're just pregnant, you're fine. But I knew I wasn't fine. And I said to her, I said, I think I have some POTS. And she says, I don't know what that is. And my husband was with me at the time. And I said, I'm really worried about my heart rate. So, you know, I explained, I said, when I stand up, my heart rate is this. And she wouldn't even check it at that time. And she said, you know what, I think you need to go home and just have a glass of wine. I think you're just nervous about having your baby. And this was the second baby I had. I wasn't that nervous. I was nervous about what was going on with my body. I knew my baby was fine. I was on bed rest for 5 months. I was taking good care of that baby. It was me I was worried about at that time. And she said to me, I am most concerned about delivering your baby at this point. And my husband said, well, what about my wife? What about her? I'm most concerned about delivering your baby, a healthy baby. And of course, I was too. So I gave birth to my son. And guess what happened? Literally overnight, I lost the ability to function. My resting heart rate in the hospital was 150, 160. It even exceeded 180 at some times. These are all symptoms that every one of you has probably experienced at some point. Intense dizziness, seeing floaters in my vision, horrible migraine headache, nausea, vomiting. I couldn't even get from my bed to the bathroom without holding onto the wall in the hospital. Here my baby's in the nursery, and I'm in bed, suffering so, feeling so sick, and unable to even hold my baby. I couldn't even get my head up off of the pillow. I was barely conscious at this point. So once your baby is born, people that have children understand this, if your baby's fine, you never see a doctor after that. They're done. Their job's done. They delivered your healthy baby. You only deal with nurses at that point. So there was nurses taking care of me, and they were coming in, they were taking my heart rate, they were taking my blood pressure often. And I kept telling them, you know, I don't feel good. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with my heart rate. And plus I'm feeling really nauseous. I really don't feel good. I'm seeing things, floaters, seeing things. I mean, they said, you just had a baby, you're fine, relax. I had insomnia in the hospital, and they had to give me an Ambien for me to sleep. Again, I should have been bonding with my newborn baby, but instead, I was in my bed worried about my inability to function, and even so more, my inability of how I was going to take care of this baby once I got home. So I asked the nurses, I said, can you please bring a doctor in, please, begging them to bring a doctor in to see me. And they said, okay, well, we'll try to find a cardiologist. So they did. Finally, a cardiologist comes to see me, and I said to her, I think I have POTS. And she said to me, no. 39-year-old pregnant women don't get POTS. Teenagers get POTS. You don't have POTS. You just had a baby. Look at yourself. I said, can you just put a heart holster on me, please? Can you just do something? And so she did. She walked me around the maternity ward, and I had to pass my baby in the maternity ward, which was heartbreaking. And the beeper went off on the machine it hit 180, red light, beep, beep, so loud, and I looked at her in fear and feeling like I'm gonna fall over. I'm holding onto the rail on the side, and she's like, you're fine. She's like, can you just relax? Like, really, relax, you're fine. You just had a baby. And I knew I wasn't fine. This lack of information from the medical community, it deeply affected my mental health. I mean, of course I had fear. Of course I had anxiety. Of course I felt depressed. What was going on with my body? And the fear of not being able to take care of my newborn. So this rejection of my self-diagnosis from the medical community was deplorable and insulting. They told me I had chronic fatigue syndrome, anxiety, postpartum depression. There was no validation of a POTS as a possibility. The numerous doctors I saw with incorrect evaluations, repeated misdiagnosis from numerous highly rated New York City medical institutions, doled out anti-anxiety, antidepressant medications, and the diagnosis, postpartum depression. I had been postpartum before. This was definitely very, very different. I was using a walker to pick up my 5-year-old son at school. I couldn't stand. I was incapacitated. I was crawling. I had to pull my baby's things down on the ground, rocking him to sleep as I was laying down. I couldn't even stand and hold him in fear that I was going to fall over and faint. I was debilitated severely. So my husband and I we ended up saying, okay, maybe you do have postpartum. Maybe you should go see a postpartum specialist. And I did. And I went to see a postpartum specialist. And you know what she did? I brought this piece of paper with me, and I'll never throw it away. She made me write down 10 times, I do not have POTS. I do not have POTS. I do not have POTS. How insulting for a patient who could barely walk, who could barely stand, who could barely function. So my husband and I were not done. Needless to say, I never went back to that doctor ever again. And we had a friend, his name was Dr. Barry Lowell, and he was a cardiologist in New Jersey. And my husband said, let's go see Dr. Barry. And we went in, he did some diagnostic threshold tests on me, standing up, laying down, sitting, taking my heart rate, my blood pressure the whole time. And he said, you have POTS. I didn't know whether to hug Dr. Barry. I didn't know whether to cry, but I said to my husband, I knew it. I told everybody I had POTS. The validation, can we all relate to this? Yes. So he prescribed extreme orthostatic, well, he said orthostatic exercise, but get my heart rate up as fast as I could, drink copious amounts of fluid, add extra salt to my diet. Okay, fine. That's fine, but all I had was fear and anxiety, because in my current state, how was I going to accomplish all this? I had a newborn baby. I had a 5-year-old. I had a husband. I had a life. So it was a lot of trial and error, very small increments. But anybody that knows me or knows my husband, we are not small increment people. Does anybody know what P90X is? Okay, so we said, let's try this. And the next morning I said, let's do it. Dr. Barry said I have to exercise and that's what's gonna make me better, I'm gonna do it. So the next morning, I have my head in the toilet because I was so nauseous. My husband felt so terrible. He said, we don't have to do this. I said, no, we have to do this. It was horrible. He was trying to do it alongside with me. I ended up like almost passing out on the ground. And I thought to myself, this isn't gonna work. This hardcore orthostatic cardiovascular exercise, it's not gonna work for me. It might work for Jane, it might work for Mary, but it's not gonna work for Wendy. So what was I gonna do? So I decided to swim. So swimming, your heart rate is 20% lower when you're in the water. You're horizontal. The anti-gravity, you don't even feel like you have POTS when you're in the water. So that's exactly what I did. I went to the pool, and people with POTS understand this, how difficult that was to actually get up out of bed in the morning, get your clothes on, get yourself to the car, get from the car to the Y, from the Y, walk to the dressing room, change, put your bathing suit on. I learned later that, why didn't I just put my bathing suit on underneath my clothes? That was a dumb moment, maybe just like a brain fog moment. So I ended up getting in the pool. I could only do 1 lap that day. And that was okay, because I said, you know what? I think I found something here. I think I might have found something that might help ameliorate some of these symptoms. And I swam every single day for 2 years. And when I mean every day, I mean every day. On Christmas, when my Y was closed, I would go find a hotel somewhere in the next town or somewhere and say, you know what, I have a medical condition. I need to exercise. Can I use your pool? And they welcomed me. And yes, and I did it every single day. So I built myself up until I was swimming 45 minutes every single day. So we fast forward to 6 months. Still swimming every day. I was still working on my daily regime at this point. My symptoms, a lot of them did subside at this point, but I was still having others that were troubling. I was still having some trouble standing. I was having some trouble walking long distances, and I was still experiencing some gastrointestinal issues. I was experimenting with medications we've probably all talked about today, like Zoloft and metoprolol and trazodone, and even Xanax. So fast forward to years 2 and 3. I'm drinking Celtic salt water every single morning. That's just enough to get my blood pressure right up for the day, and I'm fine. Today, that's all I need. I don't need to salt my food or my drinks anymore. I'm still drinking 60 to 80 ounces, sometimes 100 fluid ounces of fluid a day. And I finally made the trip to see Dr. Blair Grubb. Who saw Dr. Blair Grubb's presentation today? So he changed my life, this man. He's just as good as he thought he was when he was speaking. So he said he loved the fact that I was doing the swimming. But he said, I'd love to see you do more cardiovascular exercise. That's what's going to help you on land. So I got home, I got off the plane, went back to the Y the next day. Instead of taking the left to the pool, I took a right to the fitness center. And I just have a question. Who puts a fitness center on the second floor with 3 flights of stairs that you have to climb up? So I climbed up those stairs and I was already out of breath. I said, oh my God, is this the exercise? Am I done? And I walk in and I looked at the recumbent bike, I looked at the rowing machine, and I looked at the treadmill. And most doctors would have said what? Recumbent bike. I went right to the treadmill. And I could only do 1 minute at a 1% incline at that time. 1 minute at a 1% incline after swimming for 2 years. That was all I could do on that day. But it was okay because I knew. I went back the next day, did 2 minutes, 1% incline. Each day I increased a minute, little by little. The incremental, little by little exercise approach is what worked for me. So here's my life today. I do daily cardio exercise. I was actually at the fitness center this morning at 7:30 on the treadmill, and that is on the treadmill 30 minutes every day. I work out with a trainer 3 days a week, doing circuit training and building core strength muscle. I can't stress enough to you how important core strength muscle is for the blood pooling down to our stomachs. We want to keep it up here to our heart and our head where it belongs. And the same goes for weight-bearing exercises to build that large muscle mass again, pumping the blood up to our heart and our head where it belongs. I walk 5+ miles a day. I love my dogs. I love walking them. They get me going. I practice Reiki once a week. I meditate regularly. And in between this 5-year period, I went back to school and earned a degree in integrative nutrition, and I have my own practice today. So I help people, some people with POTS, people with autoimmune conditions, cancer patients. I do frequently lecture at Livestrong, and so on. So quickly, I know I'm running out of time, but I just want to give you some quick overall tips that helped me along this way through the journey. How are you feeling? I always loathed that question. Does anybody else loathe that question? Right, okay. So I figured out a way how to say to people, I still have a medical condition without saying it, and I'm managing. So this is what I would say. Someone would ask me, how are you feeling? And I would say, I'm managing. On a good day, I would say, I'm managing well, thank you. And that's it. That's all you have to say. So making plans, that's always difficult for people with POTS because you never know how you're going to feel. So you make the plan, you say, I'm in, but there's always the chance I might have to cancel at the last minute. And anybody who's a friend or family member, they will understand. Don't overdo it on your good days. Think about a car when you're low on gas. Are you going to push it full throttle on the highway? No, you're going to try to reserve as much gas as you can on your system. So on those good days, live, get out, but know your body and know how far to push it so that you can reserve as much of the fuel as possible for the next day, because you're going to pay the price the next day, potentially the day after that. Fear is very powerful. Don't let it define you. Stay away from the internet. That was the biggest mistake that I made, is that I went on the internet and I read horror stories that just put me in a state of fear. The mind, did anyone go to Dr. Raj's mindfulness talk? Yes. The mind is a very powerful tool. You take control of the POTS. Don't let it control you. So it wasn't just about the exercise, and anybody that's going to come to my nutrition talk tomorrow will see that nutrition is so key, and that was really the tipping point for me. The exercise helped me tremendously, but the nutrition, that was the tipping point for me, from feeling good to feeling great to reclaiming my life. So my mission, well, let me go back for a sec, because it's so important to create a daily routine. They're saying, stop. Let me just say my last point. Create a daily routine. This routine is so important, and this was the key to my recovery. Create a routine and stick to it. I know it's hard when you're a teenager, but stick to it. Sleep, exercise, salt, fluids, it's all about managing at this point. Okay, so I'll skip my mission. I just want to raise awareness. I want to raise money for funds for research for POTS and dysautonomia. And I talk about my life being reclaimed, but I want to stress to you, it's not just about the exercise, it's all of it. It's your mindset, it's the nutrition, it's the fluids, it's the salt. This picture right here, the one of me simulating skydiving, I just did that 2 weeks ago with my kids. I wouldn't have been able to do that 3 years ago. Thank you. Yeah. I'm around. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. First of all, my name is Andrea. I just want to say that our stories overlap so much. It's actually really amazing to me. So I'm excited to tell my story. I actually wrote down my story because my brain fog is unbelievable. So I didn't want to ramble on about butterflies or random things. So I wrote it down. So just bear with me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, and then I'm going to play a little video for you at the end. So again, my name is Andrea. I'm 29 years old, and this is my story. I started showing symptoms when I was in high school, and I tested positive for the Epstein-Barr virus. And then when I was 18, I was diagnosed with NCS, and I had to quit playing soccer, and I had to quit weightlifting, which were both my passions, both throughout high school and through college. However, my symptoms became manageable when I was prescribed Midodrine. When I became pregnant at 24, my health spiraled downhill very fast. I was then diagnosed with POTS on top of the NCS. I got pregnant with my second child shortly after my first was born, and during both pregnancies, I suffered tremendously. I had to leave my job, I had to stop driving. Basically, I had to be babysat the entire time. I started having non-epileptic seizures. I had swollen kidneys, 2 hernias, blood clot, and several other health issues that aggravated my POTS symptoms even more. I started getting IV fluids during my first pregnancy. After my second child was born, things didn't get better as I hoped they would. I ended up getting worse, actually. I actually got a port for IV fluids, and I get IV fluids with potassium 3 times a week and several medications. I had to go through a lot of trial and error. Last year was the worst year of my life. I was hospitalized. If I get emotional, I'm sorry. I was hospitalized, 3 times for a total of 52 days with severe sepsis. The doctors never did find the source of the infections. The last episode I had a 3-hour seizure, and I ended up in the ICU. I had multiple procedures and surgeries. I had liver and intestine and lymph node biopsies. I had my gallbladder and my appendix removed, and I had exploratory surgery. I even had to celebrate my 2-year-old son's birthday. I'm sorry, in the hospital. I was as low as a person can possibly be, both mentally and physically. I was under 100 pounds. I was in a wheelchair, and I honestly didn't want to live anymore. I was scared, I was depressed, I was angry, and most of all, I was frustrated. But one day, I decided that I was done letting this illness take over my life. I decided I wasn't going to let it define me anymore. I realized that I may not have control of all the physical issues, but I did have control of my mental state. And this realization was the first day of the rest of my life. I started a nutrition plan to gain healthy weight, and I started walking behind my wheelchair on outings. Then I started going to the grocery store, then the mall, And finally, I got enough strength and confidence to go to the gym. I started using the rowing machine, the bike, seated machines, and eventually I worked up to being able to do upright exercises. I let go of my fears because fear is just an emotion. It's not real. It's a strong emotion, and it was holding me back from doing what I thought at the time was impossible. When I eliminated fear, my new life began. 6 months ago, I was ready to give up. Today, I'm fighting. I now train 4 to 5 days a week for strongman and ninja warrior competitions. It was not easy, and it's still not easy. But I've been to the bottom, and I promise you I'm never going back. So today, I stand in front of you all to remind you to continue your fight. Where you are is temporary. If you want to be somewhere else, you have to change something. It all starts with your mind. Control your mind, control your thoughts, and you will win. Fight for it and never, ever give up. This is a video that my brother made for me. He surprised me with it, actually, of my journey back to fitness, back to my life. So enjoy. You have to rewind it. Sorry.
For 112 pounds, Miss Andrea, who is wearing blue today for dysautonomia, which is a condition she actually has and is raising awareness. It causes her blood pressure to go up, down, it goes down, and her heart rate goes up, causing her to pass out during those overhead events.
6 months ago, she was sitting in a wheelchair, and now today she's going to be competing. It's an awesome, awesome day. Solid work. Thanks. No. Good. Come on, Andrea, you got it. You got it. 15 seconds in. You got it. You got it. Jump back in there. Totally blacked out. 30 seconds left. Let's go. Let's get it.
Hi, you guys. I'm Jordan. I'm from Illinois, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about my struggle and my journey with POTS. And Andrea, I actually touched base a lot on using your mind, and that's what I touch on too. What did POTS take from you? I bet everyone in this room is listing off a list of things. Friends, milestones, and so much more. I'm no different. POTS changed my life. Overnight, my life was completely taken by this cruel syndrome. I'm sure everyone can relate. Even on my best days, I go to the store and I immediately look for the closest seat and restroom just in case I feel a fainting episode coming on. And does anyone else just dread buffets? Just the other day, I was at an event and they had a buffet, and my fiance immediately knew that he'd be holding 2 plates. There are many other things I started to dread. Stairs, traveling, working, school, social interaction, and so much more. All of these things slowly were taken away from me by my illness. I'm sure some of you have been thinking, well, she's healthier than me, or my symptoms are way worse, etc., etc. But I want to stress how sick I really was. I lost the ability to feed myself, to stand up even for a couple seconds. Then I lost the ability to sit up. My parents would have to hold the straw up to my mouth just so I would keep getting fluids. I lost everything. I want you to understand how sick I really was because I want you to realize how far my therapy and hard work has taken me. And I hope that you can reach similar goals that I have. The reason I wanted to speak today was not to sit and cry about how sick we are or what we've lost. Everyone here knows what we've lost. But how many of us really know what we've gained? This is a story of hope, and I really hope that it gives each one of you, patients, family, friends, doctors, hope that this is not what our lives are meant to be forever. It took me a long, long time to change my mindset, but I do believe it's possible. POTS took so much away from me. There's no hiding that. But at the time, I didn't realize how much I was gaining. Real quick, I want to tell you about my background. My story really has 2 beginnings. The first beginning when I was 14 years old. After a series of serious digestive health issues and a diagnosis then of mono and sphincter of Oddi dysfunction, I spent 2 years trying to figure out what was happening, why I just still wasn't recovering. 2 years felt like a lifetime, but now looking back on it, I was pretty lucky to get a diagnosis in 2 years. Finally, in 2008, I got the diagnosis of POTS at Mayo Clinic. I was really more relieved than anything, that there was a reason to the way that I was feeling. I was actually their most impressive tilt table test, meaning my heart rate was so far off the grid that they put me back down just to be safe. As a teenager, that's what you want to hear, right? But after following their exercise program and medications prescribed, I regained control over my health. Sure, I'd have occasional POTS days where I was dizzy, nauseous, brain fog, etc. But overall, I was doing great. I went to college and participated in all that goes along with the college life. I got a degree in nursing, and after graduation, I even landed my dream job. I was officially a NICU nurse. Well, for 2 months, that is. And then my second beginning, which is what I really want to stress on today. I should have known now, in hindsight, that a 12-hour night shift would probably not be good for a POTS patient. The disruption of sleep, diet, circadian rhythm, and throw in a stomach virus and welcome back POTS times 10. This is my second beginning. Oh, it's just the flu, I'll get over it. Oh, it's just a bad POTS day, weekend, and week. That's what I was thinking. Finally, I gave in to how I was feeling. I was scared to keep asking off work, especially as a new nurse. I was scared that the doctors would tell me that I couldn't work night shift. And I was really scared to give in to what I already knew, that my POTS was back, but this time full force. I couldn't walk. Some days I couldn't sit up without my heart rate reaching 200 beats per minute. I suffered with nausea, fainting, headaches, palpitations, tremors, weight loss, and severe fatigue. I was referred back to Mayo Clinic, but this time in a wheelchair. After several tests, I was sat down and again told, "You're the classic POTS patient." I knew this. I felt defeated. Will this be my life forever? A constant battle with my physical and mental health? I broke down again. I wanted to work. I wanted to be a wife and a mom someday. I wanted to run, go out with my friends, celebrate birthdays and other occasions. I wanted to simply live, and I was being told what I already knew, that my POTS was in the driver's seat and that we weren't headed anywhere that my dreams wanted to take me. I had a pity party. I cried a lot. Every single day, actually, for 8 months. My lowest moment, when I was so weak my parents ended up moving my mattress into the family room next to the bathroom in hopes that I could get there by myself. My younger brother was visiting from college, and I was mortified. I couldn't make it. I crawled on my hands and knees. Sorry. And then that became too hard. So I tried scooting on my elbows, and then those gave out. I laid face first in the family room carpet and just cried. I was done. My body failed me. And then I read something that changed my life. And if you get anything from this speech today, I want you to really, really listen to the second part. Why this is a story of hope, and why I'm up here able to stand and tell my story. And this is the quote. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. And I did. I kept trying again and again. Yesterday, tomorrow, the day after that, and I'm still trying. I believe half my battle, along with most other patients, is half physical, half mental. And I don't mean what the doctors all told you once, that it's all in your head. I mean that we are so sick, it's really hard, nearly impossible to wake up every day even wanting to try to do anything. But I decided that if my body was going to fail me, I at least would not give up mentally. And this did not happen overnight. It happened over a long, long course. Some days I still battle with it today. But I want to emphasize how important it is. My counselor encouraged me to start a goals journal. I thought this was dumb, funny almost. My goals? I didn't have any anymore. My goals were taken away from me. But she really, really urged me to do it. So what did I have to lose? And this is actually a picture of my goals journal. And the picture on the right is the first day that I made it down the driveway by myself. And that's where I started. As you can see, some days were as little as sitting up in a chair for 5 to 10 minutes. Some days a little more, some a little less. I started realizing I was doing a couple things. I even made it out to dinner once or twice. Granted, that left me in bed the next couple days, but I was getting out and socializing and enjoying my time. I started to do more little things that I thought would help me. My family all sent me their favorite inspirational quote, and I filled my entire bedroom with these. I woke up every day to those. To start your day with a positive attitude is crucial. I had a Jack and Jill bathroom with my older sister's room, but when she moved out, we slowly turned that into my POTS therapy journey room. My parents purchased a bike and rowing machine at garage sales, and I put them in there, and lots of waters and salty snacks. I put a poster board where I would write what I completed every day to keep me accountable. Some days it'd be bike for 5 minutes. Some days I couldn't even get out of bed, so I'd just do leg exercises in bed. But either way, I was doing something. I had a bulletin board of different exercises to do laying down and what I wanted to complete each week. And this was my favorite part of my little recovery room, my punching bag. I printed off the symptoms that I struggled from the most: lightheaded, brain fog, headache, fatigue, nausea, anxiety, and as you can see, many more. I placed them on different areas of the bag. Some days I remember just going in there screaming with tears coming down my face, punching it so hard. But you know what? It helped. I needed a healthy way to let out the anger towards this illness, and it did. I slowly started to see progress, and very slowly. I would take 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Some weeks and most weeks. But the important part was to keep going. It's a slow process, but quitting doesn't speed it up. I never stopped. It doesn't matter how slowly you go, as long as you don't stop. And that, I found, is the key to this illness. We kind of get stuck in this rut that's like, well, we're sick. We can't ever strive for more. This is my life now. I'll just accept it. I was there. I sat there for a long time. But I always realized that I was meant to do more. You all were meant to do more. We're given one life. That's kind of scary when you think of it. One life. And these are the circumstances that we all were dealt with. That we can't change. But we can change our attitude towards them and know that we're capable of more. I slowly started to regain some control back of my life. First, it was little things, staying home for a couple hours when no one was there, then driving 5 minutes down the road and back, going to lunch, walking the dog. Very minuscule things, but at the time, those were my milestones, not my birthday or my first job or a new apartment. Those things weren't possible at the time, but I grieved my losses and then I focused on my little gains. I learned to draw, play guitar, journal, and got very good at board games. Slowly but surely, my little gains turned into big gains. I drive, although if I'm having a very bad POTS day, I don't. I moved out of my parents' house, and although they are great, this is a very big step. I work, I'm a full-time pediatric nurse, but not in the hospital doing night shift anymore. I do home care where I can sit and make my own schedule. I'm a better nurse because of being the patient so many times. We all learn patience, pain, and determination at such a young age compared to most. We're actually pretty lucky if you look at it. Share it. That's how I figured out how to share mine. I regained aspects back of my life I never knew I would get again. I went from not being able to sit up to completing several 5Ks, and I will be walking down the aisle in just 2 months. But as all of us know, POTS doesn't just go away. I do still have some bad days. Just the other day, my fiance had to pretty much hold my head up because I was so weak from a long work day. But I found someone that makes it work. He knows he's in charge of breakfast because his POTSies feel worse in the morning. He knows after I do a long workout, I need to lay down and have salty snacks. And if I hear one more time, Jordan, the shower's too hot, you don't want to feel bad all day. But what I'm stressing is that you do find a new normal. Everyone can do it, no matter how sick you are. You surround yourself with people who understand, or who want to understand, who are patient, optimistic, and unconditional. Not only my efforts got me here. I would not be here without my support of friends and family. Also to my biggest supporter, my mom, happy birthday today. The days that you don't want to get out of bed, do it for them. And lastly, and most importantly, I was inspired by you guys to be up here. I do not do public speaking, as you can see, especially speaking about something so emotional. But you are who gave me the courage to be here. Looking out today, I see so many Jordans. I was you just last year. And I had someone up here talk to me like I am to you today, and it gave me hope, something us POTSies don't get too often. My hope for you all is that you don't let your illness define you, but that you let your strength and your courage define you. I'm thankful for my struggle because without it, I wouldn't have stumbled across this strength. Owning our story and loving ourselves through it is the bravest thing that we'll ever do. So stay strong because your guys' story isn't over yet.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Now we're going to welcome Sarah to present her story.
Hi everyone, let me get this set up. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Sarah Freethy. This is my first time attending the conference, and it's a pleasure to be invited here to speak with you guys. So I'm currently a third-year medical student at Texas A&M in Houston, training at Methodist Hospital. So that's why I titled this From Patient to One-Half Doctor. I'm not there quite yet. Okay, so I was actually born in the Forest of Dean in the United Kingdom. You guys might have heard of this place. It was mentioned in the Harry Potter movies, and a lot of the movies were filmed in this area. I had a really great childhood. I grew up playing outdoors all the time. I loved being the center of attention, always talking. This is my younger brother in the picture. And I never really had anything medically wrong as a child. Just a normal childhood. Really, the only time in England that I ever went to the doctor was to get my shots before moving over to America. Everything in England is fixed by drinking a cup of tea and just sitting down for a little bit, which is probably good for POTS. But so I had no experience with the medical community before coming here. I moved to Virginia first for a year with my family, and then we moved down to Texas. And my problems initially started in high school. We'd gone on a family trip to Vegas, and on the way back I started to feel really nauseous, had a lot of stomach pain, and my legs just turned to jelly. And I told my mom, I don't think I can go any further. And she was kind of coaxing me along, you can do it, you can do it. And eventually I just collapsed on the ground. And they had to shut down the entire security line. It was pretty embarrassing, and everyone had to be moved over to another line, EMS and everything. I was telling them, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. And I never went to the doctor after. We just figured I ate something really bad in Vegas or something happened. During my senior year, I started to get a lot of nausea that we just put down to being nervous about exams coming up at the end of the year and excitement about going off to college. But eventually, during the summer, before I started college, I passed out a couple of times. And both of these situations, there was definitely the trigger of heat. One, I was waiting in a line to go floating down the river, and I just collapsed in the line. The second time, with the same group of friends, so they got really good at learning how to catch people, I had been hanging out outside with them, went to take a shower, and passed out again. After the second time, we figured, okay, I better go to the doctor. This probably isn't normal to just pass out all the time. And they did an EKG just to check there was no heart problems and said it's probably just orthostatic hypotension, but no blood pressures were ever taken, lying down or standing, to see the difference or anything like that. I went off to UT, and pretty quickly I got really ill. I was diagnosed with a kidney infection just a few weeks in, then another sinus infection. I was always on a ton of antibiotics, and I think that I was getting better for a couple of days, and then a few days later I'd just have another episode where I would just feel really sick, nauseous. I'd have to leave the classroom. And those first few months, I was just going to the doctor all the time. Every doctor you can imagine, I was being sent to. And it was a really scary time because I didn't have my family there with me, and so I would have to just learn to take the bus to these appointments, and was having CAT scans done and all this testing there by myself. And so eventually the doctors were pretty sympathetic to that, and they told me that I should probably take a medical leave of absence so that I could return back to Houston and get some good medical care with my family around. So I took a medical leave of absence for the whole year, and during that time I really was a full-time patient. Pretty much every day I had doctor's appointments, was tested for everything, and I'm sure you guys know you get a lot of other potential diagnoses before you get POTS. So they were testing for tumors, for pheochromocytoma, heart diseases, autoimmune conditions, even psychiatric conditions they look at that we'll talk a little bit later. And vestibular disease. Eventually, I went to a neurologist who said, well, seeing as you have kind of a lot of problems, we're going to send you for an autonomic nervous system test. And she said, it's probably not going to be that because only old people have those problems, which we kind of said, okay, sure. So we looked it up, read a little bit about POTS, and thought, okay, this could be it. Well, when they tilted the tilt table, my heart rate just immediately rose 40 beats, just within seconds. And my mom, just very quietly, so as not to scare me, said to the doctor, well, is that what is meant to happen when you tilt the table? And he said, no, that's kind of what it looks like when a person's running really fast. So at that point, we knew that that was what was wrong, and it was pretty clear what the diagnosis was. My cardiologist had never diagnosed anyone with this before, so he almost wanted just to check for himself, so he actually laid me down on his table and then pulled me up really quickly just to see what would happen. And of course my heart rate shot up, and him and the nurse kind of jumped like, oh my goodness, it's real. And I had another full-length tilt table test where I did pass out. My heart rate just got way too high. So this is me being a full-time patient. I kind of like to use a lot of humor, so I always like to take silly pictures. And this was when I was having surgery to have my gallbladder removed. So like many of you guys, I was diagnosed with some other problems when POTS was being found. I had an exploratory laparoscopy that found endometriosis. I had gallbladder disease and had my gallbladder removed. I had a lot of jaw joint problems and also chronic migraines. So I did go through a few surgeries during that year. I tried all kinds of medication, Florinef for a little bit, Midodrine, which was super helpful, other than the little tingly feelings on my head. I tried SSRIs for a really short amount of time. And now I actually use Celebrex and Cambia for the migraines. I always like to kind of put that out there because I know people have a lot of problems figuring out what to use to help treat their migraines, and those are actually anti-inflammatory medications that have really helped me. So this was definitely the most challenging year of my life away from school. It's one of those things that you don't think it'll ever happen to you until it does. And one of the most challenging things is that when I was first being diagnosed, the UT doctor, he kind of really didn't know what was going on, and he said, well, I think we're going to send you to a psychiatrist. So of course, as soon as he said that, I thought, well, am I just making it all up? You know, what's wrong with me? And luckily, when I got to the psychiatrist, I'm a very open person, so I told her, I've had a great childhood, nothing wrong, and she said, you need a new doctor. And she wrote down the number of her doctor and said, there's nothing psychiatrically wrong, there's something medically wrong with you. But that really has shaped how I am now training to be a doctor. We hear a lot in school that if people have a lot of problems wrong with them, then you might want to send them to the psychiatrist. And I get very frustrated with that because I think, well, they might have dysautonomia. So I kind of really try and push for that. And I did actually create a lectureship at the medical school so that every year I bring in a physician to tell all the medical students about dysautonomia. And that's been really exciting for me because the students will come back and say, oh, I told the doctor that it could be this. And they actually are teaching the doctors about it. So I found that I was a lot stronger than I thought and that I wanted to be a doctor. During my return to UT, I did a lot of things that really helped, like joining a choir, finding good doctors, having accommodations through the university, finding just small things to be excited about. And it was very challenging, but I managed to get through. I have to kind of hurry because I'm running out of time. But, so what helps me the most now? Definitely exercise, as everyone's been talking about. I lean against every solid object imaginable. I squeeze my hands all the time. I move all the time. I drink a ton of water. Yeah, exercise is just so important. So the exciting things that have happened after all that challenging stuff, I graduated on time with a 4.0. I got a full ride to medical school, which they told me was because of the actual story with dysautonomia and the challenges that I faced there. Created the lectureship, and I recently got engaged. My fiance is right there, and he's my #1 supporter in all this. He's who got me from running to the end of the street to 5K. So, okay, thank you, everyone.
So while he's working, I'll just start with the slides. So I developed POTS at the age of 17. I sustained a concussion playing soccer. I was a junior in high school, and I was severely debilitated immediately after the concussion. It was very confusing for me because the doctors told me, you just have a concussion and you'll be fine. But I was bedridden for a month. I slowly returned to school, but just one class at a time. I was severely impaired physically and cognitively, and very worried about what would happen for college and how was I going to stay in school. So I ended up graduating on time and going to college, but it was a very difficult journey, and I still didn't know what was the matter with me.
So this is my list of symptoms. I know you guys are all very familiar with this type of list, but for me, symptoms have developed every year since the onset of POTS. I developed POTS, like I said, at 17. It took me 6.5 years to get diagnosed. I live right outside of Boston with great hospitals, and yet, and even with this huge list of symptoms, I just couldn't get across to doctors what was happening, and no doctor connected the dots. I still have all these symptoms today. No symptom has ever resolved, but my goal is not to cure myself, because I know that's not possible, but to minimize my symptoms as much as possible so that I can function. I've had some weird symptoms along the way. In lieu of time, I'm going to skip over these. But like I said, it took me 6.5 years to get diagnosed. I saw over 41 physicians at 27 medical facilities. I went to the ER 24 times. I went to different cities to try to get answers, and no answers came. These are all the hospitals that I went to. These are big names in the medical community. Beth Israel, Children's Hospital, Mass General, all sorts of places, and no one identified my symptoms as POTS, and I was very sick. Bedridden, in and out of school, basically everything that all these other presenters have said. It's, you know, it's very debilitating. I'll skip over here. So after 6.5 years, it was a gastroenterologist that finally identified my symptoms as relating to autonomic nervous system malfunction. I ended up getting diagnosed by a neurologist that he referred me to in Arizona, Dr. Goodman at the Mayo Clinic. So I have many current diagnoses, as I'm sure you all do. And one thing that has really struck a chord with me is that I had every advantage going into trying to find a diagnosis. I live close to hospitals. I have a very supportive family. I had good health care, and I had all these things that should lead to a diagnosis or some answers, but it just didn't, despite all the effort we put in. And so after finally getting diagnosed, I really do worry about what happens if you just don't have one of these advantages. You know, you're just not going to get diagnosed. So there's so many people out there that are suffering, and they just are not able to get answers. So I talked with the teens earlier today, and we talked about the social, economic, and financial implications of being sick. And these are things that I know you're all very familiar with, but, you know, why I wanted to talk today is that I wanted to show that, you know, you can go from a very low point, like a lot of the other presenters have said, and get to a place of hope. And basically, the emotional toll was really significant. I don't have much time, so I'm going to buzz through this. So the main takeaway for me was it was Mayo's Pain Rehabilitation Center that really was a turnaround. I don't think that the fix for me would be necessarily the fix for you, but I went to a place where my parents were holding me up in the shower. I was wheelchair bound in and out of school. I couldn't make it up the stairs. I had to be carried. One time I had to go to the bathroom and I couldn't get up the stairs, and my mom had to call over the neighbors to help carry me up the stairs because I couldn't get there and I was going to wet myself. And it's a really tough place to go to and think that, is there going to be any hope? I struggled with really intense emotional issues, and the PRC is a program you should look into if you're interested. It really helped me with the turnaround. So basically, I think what we've all taken from this talk is, and all these presentations as a whole, is that you can still fight for your life despite the fact that you have POTS. You can capitalize on those peaks and then make it through those valleys with real endurance and hope, and that we all need to join together in advocacy efforts. Advocacy has been the main thing that's helped me feel like I can regain some agency and control over my life. I might not be able to control being sick, and I definitely can't, but I can control, like everyone said, how I react to being sick. I can take ownership over it. That's why I'm here, it's why you're all here, and I think we all need to really capitalize on the opportunity of being together, make connections, talk to people, figure out how you can help. Awareness Month is coming up in October. Host an event, you know, get a proclamation. You can start a POTS walk. I'm part of the POTS walk in Boston. If you have any questions, talk to Sarah Mendelowitz or me. There was a great one in Philly this year. Erin, I think, is here. She helped organize that. So there's a lot that we can do as a community to help each other out, and being here is such an advantage to be diagnosed and be able to talk to people that understand and network, and we can really be loud together, and there really is hope, and you can still live your life and have POTS. So thanks very much.
I just want to take another moment to thank all the speakers today for putting their stories on the line, their emotions, Thank you.